Hello, everybody. Greetings to all. Welcome to the Snooker Hall podcast. I'm Dan Murren. The Snooker Hall podcast is back. It's been a few weeks. This is the first episode since the reaction episode when we knew the first round draw. But now the World Championship is over. Congratulations to Zhao Xintong, the first snooker world champion from China and only the third qualifier to win the title. He was immense all month. So was the tournament. Overall, it was a fantastic event from start to finish. It was a privilege and an honour to be a part of the snooker community in Sheffield. There is a lot to talk about, a lot to pick apart, a lot to analyse, some criticisms, a lot of praise, hours of wonderful snooker on the bays. That rhymes, praise and bays. Lots of narratives which will impact the sport in the short and long term, and, as I mentioned, the vibe in the city and in the arena. Let's get to it. Summer is coming, and you know what? It's a great time of year. Okay, the biggest snooker tournament has just finished. That's a negative. But I'm looking out my window right now. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. And after I record this, I'm going to take a walk in the sunshine. Let's just get some of the negatives out of the way first so we can be positive. Some shock exits in the early rounds. Let's start with the most notable, Kyren Wilson, the defending world champion. Well, he was the defending world champion. The Crucible curse got him. It's the only reason he lost. It seems like so long ago now. It's nearly 3 weeks since Kyren Wilson was eliminated from the World Championship. 10-9. It wasn't actually a classic game, but Kyren, even at 9-6 down, he showed guts. He showed composure. He showed skill, and he was able to cope with that pressure. Maybe 1 or 2 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, but Kyren has been easily one of the best players of the season. Winning 4 ranking titles, making the final of the Masters. You know what? Okay, it didn't end the way he wanted it to end, but Kyren could be so proud of how his season's gone. There is not even... Nobody thinks that he has regressed as a player. If anything, I think he's probably a better player now than he was when he won it last year. And that sounds strange because the result is not as good as last year, clearly, but I really think he's a better player. The confidence he plays with, his break building especially. He was always a good tactical player and mentally he was always strong. But his break building is at another level now. And the composure he showed in some moments in that first round match, exceptional. Kyren Wilson gets a lot of credit for the season he's had. Commiserations to him for not being able to defend the crown. But nobody else has ever defended their first time crown. So it's not as if it's a disgrace. Mark Selby out in the first round for the second year in a row. I predicted Mark Selby to win this championship, and I predicted that he would win his first round match comfortably. If I remember correctly, I said that this could be one of the batterings of the first round. But you know what? Ben Wollaston played solid snooker. I don't think he actually had to be any better than that. There was an interesting stat I saw that if you take every player of the 32 and you take all of their high breaks, Ben Wollaston's was the lowest on 84. I think there were only 4 or 5 players who didn't make a century. And there were a lot of centuries, by the way. We'll come on to that. But Mark Selby, I don't know what happened. He's been really, really good recently. He's won a couple of tournaments. He's looked strong, and it's taken some good performances to beat him. But Ben Wollaston was nowhere near being the favourite for this match. But he got the job done, and I give him credit. He actually played pretty well in the second round as well. I think he only lost 13-10 in the end. So Ben can be proud of what he did as well. Barry Hawkins. Not only one of my tips to make a deep run in the tournament, but also just one of my favourite players. I think he's one of the most I think he is a universally loved snooker player. Nobody dislikes Barry Hawkins. But he'll be disappointed to go out in the first round. Another decider, just like Kyren Wilson. Hossein Vafai, in that deciding frame actually, there was a little bit of fuss, a little bit of controversy, and I think Hossein got a little bit of criticism online for his early celebration. He wasn't over the line. And do you know what? That's not a problem for me. Players showing passion, they're into it. They want to win. They love winning, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I'm always wary of players doing that. An example that's been referenced many times on this podcast is Zhou Yulong against Gary Wilson at the Scottish Open. I think he was 2 snookers clear or 3 snookers clear. Celebrate. No, you celebrate when you're 8 snookers clear. Hussein Vafai, he wasn't even at the snookers required stage. Had he missed an easy shot, it would have backfired and he would have looked pretty silly. But he got over the line in the end. And his match against Mark Williams, apart from that one frame, which was re-racked, I think it was 63 times, Hussein Vafai versus Mark Williams, that was a good match. A really, really good match. A lot of good action happened in this World Championship. Now, I didn't predict those first 3. I'm going to call them upsets because the player who was the favourite on paper did lose. But this one, I did call. I predicted that Chris Wakelin would beat Neil Robertson. And when we look at the way Neil Robertson has performed recently, there have been such positive signs. I saw him play. I was in the Kai Tak Arena in Hong Kong. I watched him dismantle Stuart Bingham. Okay, there were circumstances which prevented Stuart from playing at his best, but Neil was ruthless. He just didn't look like missing. And he looked like old Neil Robertson from 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that's a dangerous player. But I have been critical of Neil Robertson's tactics at times. The way he plays, I find him too negative. Peak Neil Robertson is an attacking Neil Robertson. And I think he hampers himself. It's like Dick Dastardly. Just play the game and you'll win. Drive the car and you'll win. But as soon as Neil Robertson brought it back to, I think it was 7-7 or 8-8, what did he do? He regressed again. He started playing negative shots. Well, no. A boxer who has his or her opponent on the ropes does not back off and start defending. No. That boxer will go for the knockout blow. And Neil Robertson should have done that. He had Chris Wakelin reeling. But he gave him some breathing space. And Chris Wakelin, to his immense credit, came back and won the match, as I thought he would. I think Neil Robertson only has himself to blame for that. And I think Neil and Joe Perry, they need to work on something because Neil clearly has the talent. The technical side of the game is not a problem. Joe Perry said that himself on this podcast. Neil doesn't need any technical coaching. But something is stopping Neil Robertson from winning consistently. They need to work it out. I don't think it's controversial to say that I don't think Neil Robertson will ever be world champion again. I've heard it from a number of snooker analysts and pundits, voices far more prominent than mine, that Neil Robertson has a mental block at the Crucible. And it's hard to disagree with it. Something is stopping him, and God knows what it is, but they need to work it out if he wants to have a hope of winning this championship again. Zhang Anda out again in the first round. I saw it last year against Jack Jones. I predicted a heavy victory. I'm really proud of that prediction. But I thought again that he would lose. I did predict a Pang Zhenzu victory. This match, though, was a drag. I was in the Crucible for this one, and it's very rare. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to go to the Crucible. I'm not ungrateful in the slightest. I never would be, because it is a privilege to be there. But that match was tough. That first session of Zhang Anda Pang Zhenzu was truly boring. And it was during the third frame, the aforementioned Joe Perry was on commentary, and he said, and I quote, "This is tough going." And Joe, you're absolutely right. It was tough going. Both players were so afraid of making a mistake. And it was so slow and so boring. Easily one of the worst sessions of snooker I've ever attended live. Maybe even the worst. And speaking of Joe Perry, I remember when we were speaking on the Snooker Hall podcast, he was on commentary for a frame between Yan Bingtao and Mark Selby, which went basically an hour and a half. And it would appear that Joe has drawn the short straw on a number of occasions. So hopefully he'll have better luck and get some more exciting sessions in future. Because I think Joe Perry's a very good commentator. He's one of those guys, he doesn't overtalk. He tells us what we need to know, and he just lets us enjoy the match. He doesn't make it about himself. The commentator should be heard. The commentator should not be the center of attention. I think Joe Perry walks that line really, really well. And the final early exit. It wasn't the earliest of exits, but Mark Allen. He did all right against Fan Zhengyi. He never really had to get out of second or third gear. He wasn't peak Mark Allen. But he got the job done in round one. Then he came up against Chris Wakelin. And he scored a maximum. Great. He's now the only player ever to have knocked in a maximum at the World Championship, the UK Championship, and the Masters. So a massive round of applause and a huge congratulations to Mark Allen for that. But this is another year where Mark Allen has not won the World Championship. And it's another year where, let's be honest, he didn't really get close. I still think Mark Allen is one of the best players in snooker. He's just not in great form at the moment. And people have been saying this all season. I slightly disagree with it. He had some good runs, a lot of quarterfinals, a few semi-finals, and he did win that tournament in Riyadh, that silly Golden Ball thing. So he's made good money this season. But he hasn't really challenged for big titles. And he will be disappointed with that. You can never write off the pistol, though. No one would be surprised if he comes back and wins one of the Triple Crowns next season. He's that good. He is that good, and he's ruthless. He has killer instincts when he's playing well. But you know what Chris Wakelin did? Chris Wakelin did a number on him. It was a relatively comfortable victory for wonderful Wakelin. He does need a nickname. Everyone else has a nickname, but what's Chris Wakelin's nickname? I don't know if Rob Walker intended it, wonderful Wakelin. Overall, my first round predictions, I got 8 out of 16. That's not great. In the previous episode, before the main tournament began, I predicted that this World Championship would signal a changing of the guard, a passing of the torch onto the next generation. I did predict that some of the veterans would go out early and that the youngsters would shine through and that this would be the start of the next era in snooker. Yeah, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong with that. Mark Williams obviously made the final. Some of the other veterans had a good showing too. Ronnie O'Sullivan made it all the way to the semi-final despite having not played competitive snooker in months. He was handily dispatched by the eventual champion with a session to spare, but there's more to it than that. Ronnie O'Sullivan, I watched every single frame of that match live in the Crucible, and he gave up. He really gave up. When it got to 15 frames to Zhao Xintong, Ronnie kind of realised, do I have to stay here for another night? If he lost it after the third session, he could basically go and do whatever he wanted. But had he managed to get that 8th frame on the board, he'd have to stay overnight and play on. I do think he gave up. I'm not obviously, I would never suggest that Ronnie O'Sullivan would throw a match or even a frame or even a shot. As much as I'm not a fan, I don't ever think he'd do that. But maybe he knew that he wasn't going to win that match. And you know what? Subconsciously, those extra few percentage points, maybe it made the difference. And Zhao Xintong's victory looked more comprehensive than it was in reality because Ronnie did play some good stuff. He really did. And in the first 3 rounds, the big narrative being pushed, especially by the BBC, was, for the most part, he wasn't pushed. And I do agree with Sean Murphy on that, actually. Sean Murphy says that he wasn't pushed. John Parrott says that maybe Se Jiawei pushed him a little bit at the end. And I'm going to say probably not. Ronnie was over the line at that point. It would have taken a miracle for Se Jiawei to come back and win that match. He didn't play badly, but Ronnie was just a little cut above. Ronnie against Pang Junzhu. Pang was disappointing in that match. 13-4, really, really disappointed with Pang. And Ali never got going. But it was so nice to see that the match between the old rivals wasn't marred by pettiness, childishness, and just bad feeling. They shook hands like gentlemen, no fist bumps, thank God for that. Ronnie was actually shaking people's hands. Very happy to see that. I always found the fist bump disrespectful. I'm not going to get into that. But to see him shaking hands with other players and the referees, fantastic. The point is that, I don't think Ronnie played that badly throughout the tournament. He just came up against Zhao Xintong. He couldn't handle him, and I think Ronnie knew that in the end. Not a bad showing from Ronnie O'Sullivan given the circumstances, but he never truly looked like peak Ronnie O'Sullivan. We were never 100% convinced that he would be able to maintain that. But you know what? Let's see how it goes with him. John Higgins, on the table, I think he looked better than Ronnie O'Sullivan. I was in the Crucible for both sessions of his first round match, and oh God, it was a drag at times, actually. Joe O'Connor was the better player, especially early on, but he missed too many chances. John Higgins' experience told in the end. His second round match against Zhao Xintong was brilliant. It was kind of overshadowed by Williams Higgins, but it was a brilliant match against Zhao Xintong. The star power that Williams Higgins brings, I think, does contribute to that. And the fact that it went down to the final ball, that probably made it more of a spectacle in many fans' eyes. And I can understand that. But overall, if you take the faces away, take the characters away, and just look at the snooker without knowing who's playing, honestly, I thought the Zhao Xintong match was better. It was really, really good. My only gripe with that match, the John Higgins Zhao Xintong match, was the commentary on the BBC, especially John Virgo. It was a disgrace. I've always known, and I've always noticed that some commentators have their favourites, and I don't blame them for 1 minute. And I think most commentators can hide this. But the way John Virgo was getting excited whenever anything went John Higgins' way, and he sounded so monotone whenever Zhao Xintong was on top, it's just not good enough. I'll assume it's because John Higgins is one of the good old boys, and John Virgo is one of the good old boys, one of the OG crew. So John Virgo was crawling all over him. It was nauseating. It was obnoxious. John Virgo should be embarrassed with himself. And you know what? Let's just address this now. I think this is going to be controversial, but I don't care. I think it's about time John Virgo was moved on. I remember he was on Talking Snooker a few years ago, and there was a lot of fury among snooker fans that he and Dennis Taylor would not be invited back for the World Championship. And I got to say, I was among them. I thought, you know what, John Virgo, he's good. Okay, he's not the youngest guy, of course, but he is a personality. He knows the game. Why are they moving him on to replace him with respect, someone like Jack Lazowski, who, okay, young guy, fresh face, but does he have the charisma that John Virgo has? No. So, but I do think the time has come. John Virgo, listening to his commentary in the arena, he's not in touch with modern snooker. His match calls are often wrong, incorrectly predicting a player's next shot. Stephen Hendry rarely got them wrong. John Virgo is still relying on that cue ball catchphrase and just that slightly raised voice. Where's the cue ball? And it's getting old now. It's not funny anymore. It used to be, oh, where's the cue ball going? Now it's, oh God, John Virgo's going to start making it all about himself again. And I do think there is an element of that. I don't think he means to do it, but there is an element of him making jokes at the wrong time. Like, players at the table, stop making these puns. You don't need to do it. It's not about you. I was watching I can't remember which match it was, but I was with my wife and she was convinced that her headset had stopped working. And it was Sean Murphy and Stephen Hendry on commentary. And without exaggeration, they went about 40 seconds without saying anything because there was nothing to say. There was a player thinking about a shot. Why do you need to give us more information? The player is contemplating what they have to do. Just let them go. They don't need the distraction. They don't need jokes being told to the audience and a little giggle. It's distracting. And this is Sean Murphy. Some people do say that Sean Murphy talks too much. I personally disagree with that. And I think Stephen Hendry is the best commentator of them all. But if they know when to keep quiet, surely John Virgo does. Let's continue this rant. I found some of his information to be quite misleading in terms of information on frame permutations, like completely misjudging how many points are still available and giving incorrect information to the listeners. How many points are still available if a player comes to the table? It's not good enough. It's not good enough. John Virgo has been a great servant to snooker, but the BBC needs to get with the times. We need some fresh voices. Having Lee Walker on for a few of Mark Williams' matches, that sounds like a good idea, because who knows Mark Williams' game better than Lee Walker? He will be able to give us some good insight. Okay, he's not the most engaging of voices. He's not, I use this example all the time, he's not Freddie Mercury, but if you're on commentary, you don't have to be. You just tell us what we need to know, and you keep quiet, and you don't overshadow the action on the table. And I thought Lee Walker was quite good, actually. I don't know why Rob Walker was on commentary sometimes. I guess that's a case of jobs for the boys. He's not great. I do think he talks a little bit too much as well. On the BBC, as I said, Stephen Hendry is head and shoulders above anyone else. He is, for me, the single best commentator in snooker right now. On the TNT side, Hendon and Folds, excellent. Probably, well, not probably, they are my favourite combination on that channel. Alan McManus, as a pundit, excellent. He's easy to listen to, he's informative, he knows the game, he knows the modern game as well. But even on that channel, it's not all good. I'm not a massive fan of Joe Johnson. I do think he needs to be a little bit more blunt at times. There's nothing wrong with criticising a player if they're playing badly or if they've played a terrible shot. Other commentators will do that. Not the end of the world. Viewers need to know this. And Joe's a former world champion. He knows, he's been there and he's done it at the Crucible, the biggest stage of all. We would trust his opinion. And I don't know if he's afraid to criticise players. I don't know why he should be. He is an authority in the game. He's a former world champion. And just a couple more points that I really think should be made. As a pundit, Jimmy White is hard to listen to. He offers very little fresh insight. He often slurs his words, and if that's what's going on in his life, that's what's going on in his life, and that's fine. But does that make him a good pundit? I'm going to say it doesn't. He consistently mispronounces players' names, especially a lot of the Chinese players. At one point, during the final, he called Zhao Xintong Zhang Yingtong. Really? Like, that's embarrassing. Rhiannon Evans, yeah, she's not so bad. I wasn't always a fan of Rhiannon Evans as a pundit, but she really has got better. She seems far more comfortable than she did before. Maybe experience has really helped her. And never a problem to see Rhiannon on the telly talking about snooker. Jimmy, not so much. I'm never impressed to see Jimmy White as a pundit. One thing that TNT do need a big thumbs up for is something that happened only a day or two before the end. And it was Radzi walking around Sheffield, bumping into snooker personalities. So he met with Jimmy White, then he met with Alan McManus, then he met with Rhiannon Evans, then he met with Neil Foulds, and then he walks into the Crucible Theatre. It was really nicely done. It was all in one take, so big kudos to Radzi especially. But at the end, they kind of put a little stain on it, and I'll explain why. Radzi says cheerio to Neil Foulds outside the Crucible, then Radzi enters the theatre, and he spoke, for some reason, about players who have played 3 finals and won only a single championship. So he mentioned Ken Doherty, fine. Cliff Thorburn, fine. Peter Ebdon, fine. Then he mentioned Shaun Murphy. Wrong. Shaun Murphy, 4 finals, 1 trophy. Then, the most glaring one, he omitted Graham Dott. Now, I can understand why they wouldn't bring up Graham Dott, but why mention such a random stat? 3 finals, 1 trophy. Why not talk about 2 finals, 1 trophy, or 4 finals, 1 trophy? Why 3 finals, 1 trophy, when you know that you're going to have to not talk about Graham Dott? You are going to have to deliberately omit him because of the situation surrounding him at the moment. Why bring it up? Surely you can think of something else to say to fill those extra few minutes. 3 finals, 1 trophy. It's so random. This is a niche reference, but it's like when WWE tells us that only 3 wrestlers have won the Royal Rumble after entering at the beginning. Shawn Michaels, Rey Mysterio. Okay, that's 2. Who's the third? Oh, you don't say the third man. Now, they never mention the third wrestler by name. Chris Benoit. He is mostly erased from their history, and they never refer to him because of a horrific incident in 2007. Chris Benoit murdered his wife, his 7-year-old son, and then killed himself. He doesn't deserve attention, he doesn't deserve to be named, so they don't do it. But then, why bring up this stat where you kind of have to mention him? And it's the same here. The allegations against Graham Dott are super serious. And if you want to erase his name from history, why bring up random stats like this that are completely unnecessary? It just felt pointless. And after listening to it, I thought about Graham Dott. The opposite of what they wanted to achieve, I assume. So, I don't know. It just seemed to ruin what was a really, really nice 10-minute feature. But what do I know? There were some players who, I'm going to say, overachieved. Lepe Fan is one of them. Nobody really gave him a prayer against Kyron Wilson. I certainly thought Kyron would have a fairly standard victory over him. Maybe 10-5, 10-6, something like that. Kyron wouldn't really have to get out of second gear, but I was wrong. Many people were wrong. I'm going to say the vast majority of people were wrong about that. And he also did well against Zhao Xintong, 13-10. That's not an embarrassing defeat. He got a lot closer to Zhao than some more established names, shall we say. Chris Wakelin, I predicted a win for him over Neil Robertson, as I said, but I did think in the second round meeting that Mark Allen would take care of him. Not even close. Once again, I was wrong. Chris Wakelin blew him away. Okay, the maximum for Mark Allen was the standout moment of the match. But Chris Wakelin deserved that victory. It's a great effort from him, and also a great effort from him against Zhao Xintong too. But let's be honest, nobody could beat him. Judd Trump, if we look at the contenders for the title at the start of the tournament, Judd obviously was in that group. But this is another opportunity which has slipped by for the Juddernaut. At times, he looked imperious. I, in hindsight, predicted, rather stupidly, a shock exit for him in round 1. I did have a sneaky suspicion that Zhao Yulong would beat him, but Judd made me look foolish, as many of the first round matches did. He was really impressive throughout the tournament. He battered Zhao Yulong, and then we get a second round match, which really shouldn't be a second round match. Shawn Murphy versus Judd Trump. Shawn played brilliantly. Judd played just a little bit better. It was a cracking match. Judd, you could see he was nervous, maybe a little bit, as the comeback gained momentum. But he had ground out enough close frames early in the match to give himself that cushion, and eventually he did get over the line. But that's what makes Judd so hard to beat. Sometimes you'll clear the table, and there's not much he can do about that. And I think he knows that. He knows that other players are good, and you can't stop everything all the time. But those close frames where the opponent misses a chance, he's so ruthless with that. There was a match a few years ago, I want to say it was at one of the players, maybe it was at the Masters actually. I think it was. It was a first to 6. Shawn Murphy was 2-0 up on Judd Trump, and he was in for a 3-0 lead. But he missed an easy red. Judd clears the table. Before you know it, he's 3-2 down to Judd Trump. And it was just that little moment, that one lapse in concentration, and Judd pounced. And that's what he did against Shawn Murphy again. Shawn is a fantastic player, easily, for me, top 10 player of all time. Some will disagree with that. I think he is. But Judd just has that killer instinct at times. When things are close, he can win ugly as well. But a match that was not ugly was Judd Trump versus Luca Brissell. Wow, what a spectacle. Some brilliant snooker on show from both players. I mean, Luca in the previous round, he thrashed Ding. But he fell to the curse of the dragon. Every single player who has beaten Ding this season loses their next match. That's so weird. It's so weird. Is it a curse? No, of course not. It's a huge coincidence, but I don't know why. No one can explain that. Maybe it's just luck. It will break eventually. But back to Luca. Luca was a breath of fresh air at times. I'm going to say, he was kind of lucky to even get through the first round. Ryan Day was running away with that match, and I'm going to say a Ryan Day in better form would have killed that match. It was 5-1 on his way to 6-1, and again, a missed opportunity, an easy chance. Luca turns around the match in an instant, and he goes on to win with something to spare. Then he takes Ding to the cleaners, absolutely thrashes him. But you can't escape the curse. Judd, even at 8-all, I thought it would go all the way because both players were playing such good snooker. But Judd just had too much from him. Some of the shots that Luca pulls out are just beyond belief. Okay, he had a few flukes. That happens. But you got to take advantage of those flukes. And a lot of the time, he did. I can't remember actually where Luca will start next season in the rankings, but I'm sure he'll have to qualify for some of the events. It will be interesting to see how that unfolds. And the final contender we'll speak about before we speak about the champion is Mark Williams. What can we say? He proved everyone wrong. I thought Wu Yiza would comfortably beat him in the first round. But, like John Higgins against Joe O'Connor, the veteran found something when it mattered and made it through. In hindsight, yes, the whole, my eyes don't work anymore, I'm old, I can't do it anymore. He was obviously overplaying that and underplaying his own chances. But I really didn't realize how much exaggeration was going on there. He looked immense at times. The temperament of this man is unbelievable. It's easily among the best we've ever seen in snooker. He just never looks rattled. His composure is incredible. And I can't tip my hat enough because snooker is about the technical part as well, but it's equally about the mental part. Mark Williams has that ability in spades. He's a legend of this game, and he deserved a run to the final. He played some wonderful snooker, and his matches were among the most entertaining of the entire tournament. As I mentioned earlier, his match against Hussein Vafai was brilliant. His quarterfinal against John Higgins was brilliant. It's not an exaggeration to say that it was a classic. And again, he showed his class in the semi-final against Judd, the world number one, the best player of the season. He found a way through. He potted long balls, he played great safety, and his break building was ruthless. After the match, actually, I did bump into Judd after that semi-final. He was with his brother and Ollie Lines. I saw them. I saw that the mood wasn't the most joyous. Obviously, Judd's going to be disappointed to lose the semi-final. I thought it best to just nod and move along. I didn't really want to engage them in chat and harass them. Speaking of bumping into people, that might be a good segue to just drop a few names. I went into the Graduate on my second trip up to Sheffield this year. I went into the Graduate on Tuesday night. I had just arrived that afternoon. Well, my wife and I, had just arrived that afternoon. We decided to stop in at the Graduate for a quick one. We moved to a table, and she said to me that someone was waving at me, and maybe it was a member of the snooker hall community. I assumed she was mistaken. I'm not like Steve Davis famous in these circles, shall we say. Anyway, on our way out, who do I see? Friend of the show, Gary Moss, having a chat with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. It turns out that Gary was indeed waving at me, trying to get my attention. So, Gary, apologies. I didn't mean to blank you. I was in my own little world. Anyway, on our way out, I stopped by to have a chat. Big shout out to Phil Haig, actually. His food tips were excellent, and I'll go over those now. I'm not getting paid for any of this. I probably should ask for a few quid from these places because I'm going to praise them to the heavens. Butler's Balti House. Fantastic. Some of the best Indian food I've had in a long time. I do like Indian food. Even the poppadoms were better than your average Indian restaurant. They were really, really good. I had the tandoori lamb chops, delicious. The rice had a slightly spicy flavour, not too spicy, just a little bit. The Scoville units were whispering, and the chicken tikka was top class. That's my go-to dish, chicken tikka, not chicken tikka masala. I don't believe in the sauce. I just like grilled, flavourful chicken. Another place that I would highly recommend for anyone in Sheffield, snooker fan or not, Brenda's Fish and Chips. Again, it's easily the best fish and chips I've eaten in 2025, and it was delicious. The batter was crispy, slightly salty. The fish was hot, fresh, and flaky inside. Really, really good. The chips were first class. And it was £6 for a cod and chips. £6 in 2025. That ain't bad. London prices are super, super expensive. Years ago, about probably close to 18, 20, maybe 20 years ago, I was working in the University of London, just off Tottenham Court Road, Mallet Street. But I would pop over to Tottenham Court Road sometimes to get fish and chips for lunch. And there is a place just near Goodge Street Station, and it was always good. Anyway, I'm with my sister on Tottenham Court Road, and I suggest, should we get some fish and chips? She agrees. She lives in Denmark too. We don't really get great cod and chips in Denmark, so we might as well take advantage when we're in London. So we pop over to a place called Gigs, and it was always my go-to fish and chips back in the day. But now it's a sit-down restaurant mostly. And it was more than £20 for cod and chips to sit down. £20! Ridiculous. Anyway, we got a takeout. It was half the price. But Brenda's was better. £6 for a cod and chips, and it was really good. Anyway, I highly recommend Brenda's. Sorry for the rambling. It was on our way back from Butler's Balti House that night where my wife and I saw Judd Trump and Ollie Lyons and Jack Trump. We were on our way to the Graduate, and in the Graduate that evening, there were a host of prominent snooker personalities. I was chatting with Brian Campbell and Rob Francis, and Alan McManus came up in conversation. Rob Francis, big friend of the show, he said that Alan McManus, he's just over there. So I popped over to see, and there was Alan McManus with Dave Hendon, so I had to go and say hello. Really nice chap, Dave Hendon, we all know how nice he is. Finn Ruin, friend of the podcast, WPBSA qualified coach. He was working on the Q Zone in the Winter Garden. He was there having a pint with his old mate Joe Swale. And I've got to say, the outlaw, he doesn't fluff his opinions. I invited him on to the Snooker Hall podcast. Let's see if we can work that out. He would be an incredible guest. I'd love to have him on. But that's the point. There were so many famous snooker faces that I would recognise. Neil Folds was in there, superfan Kelly Barker, Chris Downer, the man behind the Crucible Almanac. He's a lovely bloke. He's so easy to talk to. But everyone just talks. There's no snobby attitudes. Nobody thinks they're too good to talk to anyone else. It's like-minded people coming together to enjoy a festival of snooker, a sport we love so much. I cannot recommend it enough. I'm going back next year again. I have tickets for all sessions of the final. Already, I can't wait. Everything about the vibe and the attitude during those 2 weeks in the city is positive. Just hope and pray to whichever God is yours that the World Championship will remain at the Crucible for years to come. But back to the snooker on the bays, the final word goes to the new World Snooker Champion, Zhao Xintong. Take away the controversy and the mixed opinions on his participation, I think everyone can appreciate the mountain he had to climb to achieve this feat. To win 4 rounds of qualifying and then 5 rounds in the Crucible, that's 111 frames. It's incredible, remarkable. The closest he was pushed was in qualifying twice. He got through 10-8 against Long Zhi Wang and Elliot Slesser. And I'm going to say they are both in my WST Fantasy 5. So thanks a lot, Zhao. But it's an incredible performance on a sporting level. Nobody can deny that. I do get why some people are wary of this. Is it a stain on the sport? I can see why some people will say this. I want to look at this in a more forgiving light. Zhao Xintong messed up. He's a grown man, he made mistakes, he faced this punishment, and now he's back. It appears that he did cooperate with the investigation, and I think there should be some mitigation and there should be a more lenient sentence for helping bring worse people to justice. This could be huge for snooker, not only in China, but across Asia. We have a young man, he's 28 years old, he's the face of the sport in Asia now. He will take the mantle from Ding Junhui. His English is a lot better than some of the other players from China, so he may find the media spotlight and the responsibilities easier to deal with. That's just a bonus. It's a good time for snooker. It's a time of hope. The emergence of a new generation is on the horizon, and in some ways, it's already arrived. I hope the sport can capitalize on this occasion and grow across the world. More tournaments in mainland Europe. There is a market for it. A tournament in North America, back to Australia, lucrative TV deals, household name brands sponsoring big snooker events. Expansion is key. I hope the powers that be don't drop the ball on this. As the main snooker season comes to an end, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who has listened to the Snooker Hall podcast this season, and to everybody who has taken the time to speak on the show. The guests have been incredible, really informative, and they've shared some great stories and some great knowledge. That's the ethos of the show, to hear parts of snooker that we wouldn't normally hear from different corners of the sport. That's why I do this. If you want to get in touch, the email address is contactus@thesnookerhall.com. You can follow the show on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram. The handle for all of those platforms is @thesnookerhall. Over the coming weeks, there will be some very exciting guests on the show. It's a good time. Ian Burns will join me soon to talk about life on tour and the expanding snooker coaching industry. Double Maximum Man, Jackson Page, will join the Snooker Hall podcast later in the month, and Andres Petrov, the Tallinn Lamborghini, will return to the Snooker Hall podcast to chat about Q School, which starts later this month. WST tour cards up for grabs at that event. A big, big event for a lot of players. There are no specific dates for those episodes yet, but you can expect them over the coming weeks, maybe over the coming month. If you could take just a second, a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, it would help even more snooker fans find out about this show. In just over a year, I'm amazed at how many people have discovered the Snooker Hall podcast. There are members of the community in nearly 70 countries now. Recent additions to the list are Andorra, Bolivia, and Mexico. So, bienvenidos a todos. I hope everyone enjoyed the World Championship. The snooker train, it rolls on though. Snooker never stops. Please keep an eye on your podcast feed for more episodes. And until next time, take care.